It's one of those things too, when you kind of go through and you get to this stage, you think about everyone that's had a piece of your career over the time. It's not just the people that you're with now. There's a lot of people that have had a piece of it who probably also maybe sit there and feel equally as proud for me running out there for 400 as they did for my first. I mean, Mike Wells rolled in and 3 weeks in, he told me that there's 3 players he's been around that'll be head coaches, and I forget the first one, but the second one was Mike Conley, and the third one was me.
It was a letter that you wrote when you were young, and it just said, I want to be an NBL player.
It is pretty cool to be able to say that I'm here now.
Welcome back to another episode of The Huddle, and these are a little bit more special when it comes with a milestone attached, and that's exactly what we have this weekend. 400 games coming up for Jason Cadee, and Jace joins me now. Does it seem a little weird to hear that? You would have heard it all week, Jace, but it's now officially going to become a reality.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things. I spent a lot of my career spending it worrying about other people and not myself. So when the attention gets turned to me, I'm not one that loves milestone games, but yeah, I think some of the people around me who have played, who I've become really good friends with, have kind of preached to me how big a deal it is. So I take that with a lot of respect from them and even some teammates, but I'm also mindful of I'd rather it be about someone else.
Some of those teammates we'll get into because we'll unpack what has been an incredible 399 game career up until this point. But guys like Adam Gibson, Chris Goulding just had his 450th. It was Todd Blanchfield's milestone last year. These guys that you've seen and competed with and against for so long. Do you have extra conversations with them this week? Do they reach you out, or do you really try and not make it too much of a big deal?
I try and avoid it. But obviously I've seen Chris on Sunday and said congratulations to him. It's one of those things, and Hools, I've obviously played against you too, but you see over the years, people come in, people go out, people stay. And so as I kind of get to this stage now, and it kind of hit me when Tommy Abercrombie left last year, there's only a certain few guys that have been there since I started now. And Chris is obviously one of them. Blanche is another. I think Jesse Wagstaff, and that might be it. So when it kind of, I was trying to think about it, but when you kind of think about it like that, it kind of sets in that I've been around a long time. And then also Anthony Petrie, who I play with, who's obviously one of my best mates. He's our second eldest daughter is trying to get on a trip over here for Sunday. And she said, Dad, I've been there since the start. And she was 4 when I started. She's now almost 18. So, yeah, it kind of puts things really, really in plain sight of how long it's been.
What kind of emotions do you think will come over you on the weekend? And is it something that will start to hit you the closer we get, or is it more once the game builds up, the warm-ups, the family and the crowd, Petrie, stuff like that? Or is it more of when the lights come on, it'll be a moment that when the game ends, maybe you look back and think about it?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. Obviously, you go through and you have certain milestones in your career. I guess talking about it, when you get things like these and you start talking around, talking about it, or you hear from players you've played with, that for me hits a little harder than probably just the game itself. But I'd say having kids now, as you'd also know, kids changes everything. And so having my kids at the game, and even they've been out in the court with me the last couple, and Louis especially, he's at the age where he kind of gets it. And so I just think having them there will mean a lot. And it's one of those things too, when you kind of go through and you get to this stage, you think about everyone that's had a piece of your career over the time. It's not just the people that you're with now. It's my under-12s coach. It's my school coach growing up. Like, there's a lot of people that have had a piece of it who probably also maybe sit there and feel equally as proud for me running out there for 400 as they did for my first. So that's kind of a cool thing to think, that there's a lot of people that feel attached to your career as well.
The becoming a father and the kids one we'll touch on a little bit more throughout the chat, but I could only envision, and my daughter's 2 and doesn't understand the difference between Bluey and Peppa Pig, so there's a lot of things there. But as you said, Louis a little bit older and gets the understanding. That would likely make the magnitude of it for you a little bit more special, because maybe not understanding what exactly the 400 means in terms of NBL history, but as you said, players come and go, and it's very few who can knock up 400 games, and in a career like you've had yourself as well.
Yeah, him being a part of it when I was young. So I guess the thing is, I grew up around basketball. Like when I was a little bit older than him, Dad started the Razorbacks, was the CEO. So I was running around and in basketball environments from his age and younger. And I just think back to how great my childhood was, being in stadiums with friends and running around and basketball going on. And it's been my life since I was that old. And so for him, just to see him in that environment, and hopefully he just remembers it. At one stage, I actually played in front of people. For me, that carries a lot of weight. And it's more because I think growing up in the basketball environment is a great place to grow up in. Like, obviously speaking to you, and I've known you a while now, Hools, but just like some of the people you meet through basketball in your journey, we've all had similar, different, but we've all been in that environment. And I believe it's a great environment to grow up in. And so for me to see him in that, it's something I always wanted, to have kids while I was still playing, and hopefully they could remember, just so they could be around the boys. And like, he walks in the change room, he has no idea that Montrezl Harrell has given him high five, or you know what I mean? Like, there's things like that he doesn't know, but at one stage he might be like, I remember that guy. And so for me, that's what you start creating memories. It's more about him enjoying those games and Scarlett and all that than it is me.
To put that on the other side of it, when you were running around with looking at the West Sydney Razorbacks and then a floor wiper at some point, what do you think the emotions will be for your parents and your old man sitting there knowing that was you? You talk about what you're seeing with Louis, but that was them seeing you run around and enjoy it all way back.
Well, Dad often says that I went from being his son to he's become my father now. Everyone says, oh, you're Jason Cadee's dad. And he says, no, hang on, that's my son. But no, I think for them it'd be pretty cool. Dad never gives away much, obviously, and Mum's a little more talkative to certain situations. But I think for me, knowing what they did with their basketball careers and their lives and what they've achieved in basketball, like, I think they're both Hall of Famers in New South Wales, and Dad's been an Opals and a Boomers coach and played, and so I think I've kind of to follow in their footsteps in a way, but kind of walk my own path. I feel like they'd sit there and feel pretty chuffed that I've been able to do that. Obviously, it got off to a shaky start. There was a time where maybe I wasn't even going to play one game, and so to kind of probably watch me grow, and I think now see me with the family and things, I think they probably sit there being pretty happy, and they're at the stage where they're just happy as long as the grandkids are around. So that's always cool.
It is always good, and it's fascinating that you bring up the incident that was nearly ended not just your basketball career before it started, but your life, that at the time was a significant news story. And we always went back to how incredible it was that you managed to get away from that situation with that car accident. Is knowing all of that and what happened make it even more special what you've achieved?
Yeah. I was a bit naive to it when it happened. I treated it like it was just an everyday thing, even though I basically should have died. But the fact that I sit here now and other than basically that time I had off after it, since that day I've played my first game, I think I've missed 6 games, and that was through 1 broken finger, 3 with a concussion, and 2 were a DNP last year, which we don't need to get into. But like to be able to do that and basically play, I think I played almost 300 games straight at one stage. All those little things, considering there was a time where I basically had to learn how to walk and run again 2 months before the preseason was about to start. So it means more now. Once again, go back to kids. The thought that I almost missed moments like that hits home really hard. And now I guess to sit here and say I'm going to play 400 games in a league that I grew up loving, being a part of as a kid, wanting to play in, it was all I wanted to do. Maybe it'll really set in later. I don't know, but it is pretty cool to be able to say that I'm here now.
We won't mention the missed game for a broken finger because Damien Martin likes to jump on and listen to these things. And broken fingers and Damo, he'd do anything to get through one of those.
No, I've played through a lot. The broken finger was more that I couldn't move it was on my right. It was my left hand, I would have been sweet. It was my right hand, and I couldn't dribble. But Damo can at least know that I was supposed to miss 4 weeks, and I missed 7 days. So he at least expect that.
I was reading an article earlier from, I think it was 2014, and you were telling somebody about growing up, and either your mum gave it to you, it was a letter that you wrote when you were young, and it just said, I want to be an NBL player.
They were cleaning the house up and going through different things, and I found it not too long ago again. It was about 4 years ago I found it again, but it was like a year 2 diary where at school we had to write things of like classic learning to handwrite. And I was going through this laughing at all the silly stuff at however old I was then, year 2 kid was saying. And then one page just said, when I'm older, I'm going to be an NBL player. I want to play in the NBL. And I guess you forget those little things that you kind of think about when you're younger. So to read that and think about at that age, what I would have had to have been 7 or 8, to write that and then be able to live that out. Yeah, it's a pretty, I'm going to keep saying cool, but it is a pretty cool feeling to know that kind of that kid wrote that and now me as an adult has been doing it.
Well, and as I've said a few times, there's very few who can notch up a milestone like 400 with the success that you've had personally. When you look back on the last 399 games, what are you proud to have learned? Let's start on as a basketball player, professional athlete. When you look back at it all, is there any kind of, I guess, lesson out of being a pro basketball in Australia that if you had your time again, you might have done things a little different?
I guess you're always like, I guess the thing is it never stops. Like I don't get to now and be like, okay, yep, I've done all I need to do. And I just keep like, you never stop as an athlete, especially in basketball. You just always want to get more and keep going. And sometimes I forget I'm now 33, not 21. And so for me, I guess I was really fortunate growing up in a basketball family that I knew the understanding of trying to learn off other people. So there's some things I could have done differently in terms of I probably could have been a bit more selfish at times and worried about myself rather than others, but it's just not the person I am. And so I look back to that group I started with on the Gold Coast with Joey Wright as a head coach, and I had guys like James Harvey, who I was with the Razorbacks when I was younger and I idolized. Mark Worthington joined that team. Steve Hoare, who was one of the first players for the Razorbacks, so I was about 7. And then Gibbo, Peach, all these guys filter into that. Like I was so fortunate. Bubbles, Goulding, all those guys. Like I learned so much in those years that like I can just, it's more what I can hand down to other people now. Like just the things I've seen, the people I've watched over my career. That's probably the biggest thing I've got out of it is how much I've learned watching others, hearing people talk about stuff. Your Damian Martins, watching Damo, talking to Damo, how he thinks about stuff defensively, how Mickey Vacone used to go about it. Like all those guys, I've just like, it's the one thing that's always come natural to me, and that's basketball and talking basketball and understanding it. And I feel like all those things I've learned off multiple people over the years has just been stuff that I've been able to hold on to. And whether Louis or Scarlett or Jude want to listen to me talk about basketball or not, because I'm dad, but I feel like at least I've got a pretty good understanding of what it can look like.
And the other side of everything that you learn on the floor throughout the 399 games is everything you deal with off the floor as a professional athlete, both pre and post becoming a father. When you look back at it now, because as you said, basketball doesn't stop and you've had a lot of success in the off season as well. It becomes not just a 12-month-a-year thing, but it becomes almost 10 years straight. The mental strength and capacity it takes to be at your best every single year, how have you managed to do it at such a high level for so long?
I've definitely gone through it at times, no doubt. It's one of those things that I started to learn a few years ago that it's just you can't bottle everything up, and I try to do that. I was always one, like, speak about injuries, like I've played through some sicknesses and injuries that I know for a fact other people wouldn't have played through because I've seen them sit out. And so some of those things that I played through, but I always said to myself that if I can play 5 minutes to help someone else, then it was worth pushing through whatever I was dealing with. And so I guess just over the years and kind of how I grew up, and once again, kind of those guys that I was around early years, that was just what it was. You just, if you can help the group, you find a way to help, whether it be 1 minute, 15, 20, no matter what you're going through. And I kind of had that instilled in me for a long time in my career. And that's what I was just always like, no matter what happens, I'll be there on whatever night the game night is. And if I can play 1 minute and help, then hopefully I can help for 1 minute. And so for me, it was just one of those things of, it's a roller coaster. You learn a lot of it. And mentally, probably in the last, 5 to 6 years, it's probably become more of a thing, the mental side of it, where it wasn't really there at the start of my career. It was just like you either get through it or don't. But I've learned that it's okay to talk to people. It's okay to sometimes feel not great. And the one thing the accident taught me was that I had really good people around me when I was that age. I had a great friendship group. I had great family friends. because I relied on them. There was times where my mates were showing up to my house every day just to come hang out because I really couldn't move off the couch. And I learnt very early on that the people you surround yourself with can take you a long way. And so I've always been really, really big on, I'm a people person, and I make sure I put the right people around me in my friendship group or mates, whoever it may be. I think it goes a long way to, especially in this journey of being an athlete, when there's so much spotlight on people and you can have a good game, a bad game, and you'll be hearing different things. But I've kind of always known who my circle was, where I needed the truth from.
The last one on the car accident, with how big it became in the news cycle and continued for so long, have you had moments recently or since then when you decided to maybe not look at any of the footage from everything that happened? Or is it something that every now and then you pull out and you're like, wow, like this is something that could have really been catastrophic, but what I've built back up from then, and it's a different, gentle reminder than just your memory?
Early years, I try to avoid it a little bit. And then it got to about my time in Sydney when that thing happened where I hadn't ever met the lady who jumped in the car, Ida. And then I was in Sydney, and that kind of got blown up way bigger than I thought it would. It was just me telling the story, and then we end up finding her. And being able to just meet her and greet her and put a face to the name was one of the things that I'll forever remember from just a story in the basketball community that ends up getting spread amongst media. And all of a sudden, this person who'd been like a almost ghost to me. I just remember that day, but I have no idea what she looked like. I just remember her name. And so I'd always avoided it. But when I got to Sydney and that happened, it was a moment for me where I was like, it wasn't closure, but it was just a moment of like, it put all the pieces together as well. But it's something that it's a part of my life. Once you get far removed from it, it's hard to, I guess you still remember certain details or certain things from it, but it's not as clear as it once was. But it's something that I've just also learned to accept, and it's why I'm so comfortable talking about it, because it just was a big part of my life. And I still remember at the time, like, people messaging me, like, being like, this is like something you see in movies. It's not something that happens to someone you know, and that kind of stuff. And it was so true at the time. Like, it was just such a blur, but it really happened.
And again, that around that time was the first taste of the NBL after that. And you mentioned the Gold Coast Blaze. And I tell you what, there's no better memory lane to go down than looking at some old Gold Coast Blaze footage, because there's a lot of fun times up there. What are some of the great memories from your time at Gold Coast? You were young. It was a long time ago, but it would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, people say I didn't go to college, but that was the Gold Coast. Nah, it was awesome. It was actually, if you look at the choice I made at the time, I kind of was basically Sydney, Adelaide, or Gold Coast. Marty Clark, who I had a lot of respect for and still do, was going to Adelaide. Sydney was where I was from, but the people they had on the Gold Coast, I didn't know Joey from a bar of soap. I think he watched me work out one time when we were there for Christmas holidays, and Shane Hill got me in to do an individual with him after their training session. And then that's how that relationship started. But I made the decision based off, I'd heard great things about Joey, and I loved the personnel they had there that I knew I could learn from and be around. And I loved it. I've still got so many close friends there. It just happened to be that I work out in Brisbane and kind of around the Gold Coast anyway. And the basketball community there has grown so much in my 15 years, where now it's like a completely different world to what it was back then. But I loved every bit of it, and I learned so much. And there was a lot of fun had on and off the court with the personnel we had. We had a great group of guys, that's for sure.
One of the highlights that I keep trying to get a proper footage of, I don't know whether you were in the Ira Clark dunk.
Oh, I remember that. I was when I was injured, though. One where he dunked in cans.
And it was one of the biggest dunks of all time. And every time we see big dunks, and we can't get the proper footage of it, but he was athletic as they come.
I remember the first time he came in. So that was when I was coming back from my injury. And this is when me and Peach really became really close. He tore his Achilles. So I would just go to Peach's house way more than he probably was looking for. I was there 3-4 times a week. I was basically like their third kid at the time. And so we would watch games. And so I remember us watching that game, and he almost stood up and redid it. And there's still a blurry vision somewhere, but that dunk was huge. And then the first time I met Ira, he walked in and shook my hand, and I swear his hand went to about there. I just remember being like, oh my gosh. But he was, yeah, see, sometimes you forget Ira was legit. He was good. He was big. like you'd think about guys like Lepepe and stuff like that. Like Ira was like a 6'9",
Mm.
same size, could shoot it, good athlete, and he was a bit older at that stage too.
No, he was fun to watch. Some way, somehow, we'll get a high definition footage of it. But the Gold Coast memories as a whole, when they folded, what was going through your mind at the time? Because obviously now there's talk of them coming back, and we'd all love to see it and hope it's sooner rather than later. But when that all did fold, and what transpired for you after that?
It was kind of just there was some legal stuff going on that I knew about, obviously with a prior coach, and so I knew there was a bit going on. The Tomlinson family who owned it, I'd also heard a bit like they were under a bit of pressure, only being a family that owned it, but they were great people. And so once again, kind of young, naive, I was actually me and Joe Terzakian, who's now at Illawarra, me, him, and another friend. We were over in the States. We went to Vegas, Cabo, and stuff like that. So we actually found out about it whilst we were away. It was kind of one of those things like you'd started talks around, am I coming back? Am I not? What does it look like? And then all of a sudden it's like, no, they're done. And so it was like, hang on a second. We're like at that age, wait, I'm supposed to get paid next week. What happens to that? And so all those things start to take place. I'm over living a life that I couldn't afford. But so we just kind of go through that. But at the time too, as I said, Marty really wanted me to come to Adelaide at the time. So one of the first people that rang me was Marty Clark saying, Jason, I know you said no to me 2 years ago, but it hasn't changed. I want you to come to Adelaide. And so the amount of love and what he did for me growing up, it was kind of a no-brainer for me at that time. I don't even remember entertaining much else. There was a couple others, but I remember just thinking Adelaide, Marty, perfect.
And your first time in Adelaide, the first stint there, you obviously got close to that elusive championship and got close to the feeling. But what the connection you built with Adelaide, and everybody had this, not assumption, but everyone thought that there might be a chance that at some point in your career you would end up back there. And as I talk to you now as an Adelaide 36er, it is that kind of full circle moment as you head towards this milestone, isn't it?
Yeah, I loved my time there. And you were around, you were back and forth from college around then, but it was the same thing. And people sometimes give Marty a bit of a hard. I kind of wish for Marty's sake that my year that I got here was his second year, because that year Peach comes in, Gibbo comes in, so us three from the Gold Coast come in, and that first year we struggled, but we lost like I think 10 games by under 7 points or something. Like we were close, we just couldn't get over the line, and we just lacked a bit of a killer. And the year after, Joey brings in Gary Irvin, and we got the guy. You know what I mean? And we go close to winning it. But I loved my time here. I loved that group we had with Shench, Daniel Johnson, Stevie Way, Creaky, Gibbo. Like we had some really great guys and some really good basketball players. And we just, even that first year when we struggled, the connection we had, and I guess being in Adelaide, everyone lived 5-10 minutes from each other. It was really a great place. And that's why when I come back here, it didn't feel like a strange place to be in. A lot of things have changed a bit, but it's still very similar, and there are a lot of the same people you see around. And so, as you know, being from here, once you kind of here and you have those connections, it really is a great, enjoyable place to be in. And we also know that that kind of year we got rolling for me was the start of Adelaide really finding some just following where people were back. Like that grand final we ran out in game 2 against Perth, I felt like people were hanging from the roof at Adelaide Arena. It was nuts. And I feel like from that point on, it just generated and has just kept getting better and better.
We see that when you step onto the floor and we talk about how important that veteran leadership is, what you bring, and you can still break open a game the way that we've known for 399 games. How's the body feeling? How's the mental side of it all? Because it just seems like you've got plenty left in the tank still.
No, pretty good, to be honest. Sometimes I try and tell myself I'm a bit older, but I don't. There's days for sure. There's days you get older and you just like, today, let the young fellas go for it. But no, I'm only 33. That's the thing. I think some people probably hit this and they're a little bit older. I'm only 33. I still feel really good. I don't really miss days. Like I train every day, try and play every game. So for me, I still feel really good. There's definitely days where you are a bit older than some of the 18, 19, 21-year-olds run around, but there's also ways which you can still have an effect on practice without being on the floor the full time or just getting in and out. So I've just started to learn sometimes it's about work smarter, not harder. But body still feels good, and mentally, I just, this year, especially under Mike, I've really enjoyed his leadership and kind of having a role. I feel like I haven't had a distinct role for a period of time.
We'll touch on the Sixers this season because it's a whole lot of fun. I was there last Friday against the Sydney Kings. You talk about the support from the club, the fans and everything. It is a fun place to be at right now. And you talk about having a role in Mike Wells. There's a lot of positivity that's flowing out of the Adelaide 36ers, and it seems to just be, again, taking over the city like the time when you were here last time.
Yeah, it's got a bit of that feel to it. It's just and bigger than it was then. Like it's been enhanced, as I said. But even that game on Friday and our home games really show it, that playing at the entertainment centre just has a vibrant, bright feel, and just the crowd. It's a bit of a different crowd to what it was when I was here first. It's different. I feel like there's more families, and it's a different feel. But the want, you can just feel the want for something special to happen from outside, and the group as well has that feeling. We have a long way to go. We've got a lot of personalities and a different mix of things. But if we can keep slowly figuring that out as we go through the season, I just believe we can get to a place where we can really be tough to beat. But as you know, there's a lot that goes into that. But there is a feeling for me, and just I get it at home games when I sit there, especially when games start, and you kind of sit there and let it all soak in. And I always love just watching the start of games before when the guys walk out, and you just kind of get that feel for the game and the crowd. And Adelaide's got a bit of that buzz about it now, and it's definitely something you can sense and feel just sitting there.
Yeah, the entertainment centre was great. And it was your first in, because I obviously were around the Clipsal Powerhouse days when, as you were leaving, and me growing up, you used to get chocolate milks and iced coffees, and they stopped doing that a couple of years after that. But I don't know whether they give anything out after the games. We need to get, but that was the iconic times of Adelaide, I remember.
We had that fridge stocked, and it gets stocked every Tuesday, and you just be chocolate milks, iced coffees, whatever you wanted. It was that fridge no longer exists. It was there. It was here all that time ago, but I don't know. Maybe someone took it.
Maybe I'll make a call and we'll get it back. I do want to hit you with a couple of little fast questions here before we wrap this up, because I don't want to give you time to think. You are a phenomenal storyteller, and you've learned so much throughout your time. So whatever the first names that kind of pop to your head, or the first reasons, but over 399 games, who's been your toughest opponent?
I used to always say Casper Ware, just because he was elite at both ends. So I always said Casper was tough. I mean, you could throw a host of names, but you said quick answers. Casper comes to mind really quickly.
Nah, good answer. I can also attest to that. That's the biggest pain of going in practice, especially, and then when you change clubs. What about the best teammate basketball-wise?
No, see, this is loaded. There's
You
too
can throw
many.
a couple.
I go back Adam Gibson and Anthony Petrie for sure. From everything basketball-wise, they used to cover multiple people. Like, they were those guys that could do your job whilst they're doing their job. Brad Newley was big for me my whole career, but getting to play with Brad in Sydney was really cool for me. And then there's a whole heap of others, so I'm going to miss a heap of people that I'd say, but Kev Lish is one that stands out. Kev was like Casper. You could say Kev too. Just every day was like a grind with Kev. I did make him kick a ball once, and I'm so happy that he did that. It's the first time I seen him show an emotion. And then he apologized to me later, because that's the kind of guy he is. But Kev Lish was, man, when you speak around people who could get it done on both ends of the floor and make big shots, and he's got to be up there with one of those guys in all of the NBL for a time of just guys who can really get shit done.
Oh, I love the Kev Lish one. I think that around that time we need to also, as a league, continue to hype those guys up. The Kirk Penny era is around that time as well, especially. What's your favourite NBL highlight over the last 399 games?
There's been, obviously I haven't won a championship. It's the one place I haven't managed to win. Not yet. There's still time. But I'd honestly just, I can never pick one. Like, obviously the grand final series in Adelaide, when it was just the league was starting to pick up some momentum again. But I've had such great experiences wherever I've played, like the Gold Coast to Adelaide, to Sydney to Brisbane to back to Adelaide. Like, there's been some crap in between, believe me. But even through those times, just some of the personnel or some of the things that have gone on in that time, I've had such a great journey. And it's why I wouldn't change anything for the world. Like, believe me, I wish I was in some situations where it was just like roll in, train, and that was all you had to worry about, and we were winning. I wish I was, but I also wouldn't change it because I feel like it's made me such a better person. And if I carry on in basketball, which it'd probably be hard not to over time, I just feel like I'll be so much better for the journey I've been on.
Is there some sort of coaching plan in the future or something around basketball, you think?
Yeah, I've started to see it more in the last few years. I mean, Mike Wells rolled in, and 3 weeks in, he told me that there's 3 players he's been around that will be head coaches, and I forget the first one, but the second one was Mike Conley, and the third one was me. So
that's a pretty good list.
I know he picked me pretty quick. Yeah, it's hard to say it's not part of my DNA a little bit. I just feel like I understand the game really well, and I'm one of those people that can really actually speak it and help others. Some know it really well but can't speak it. Some can speak it but they don't really know it. I feel like I find that blend. I'd have to find out how well I go at giving a spray. That's not really in my nature, but I'm sure I could find a way.
I'm putting you on the spot here for your last one, Jace. And again, normally people grab these little clips and it'll go on socials. They asked JJ Redick this before he became the Lakers coach. So you can answer this for me. But you're trying to win a championship this year you got to give me 5 players. You can be the 6th man if you want, but I want 5 guys who are going to win a championship of your teammates throughout your career at their prime.
Wait, so you want 5? So I've got to pick a starting 5.
Yep. In their prime, who would win a championship?
I pick Adam Gibson, Kev Lish. Jeez, I've played with some good players.
Yeah, the first 2 of them.
I would pick Julian Kazoo as the 5.
Wow, yes.
I would pick... I'm going to have to look after my boy here. I'll pick Peach at the 4 and Josh Childress at the 3.
Look at that. That's you went with 4 locals there too, and you play with some very good imports. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of guys. Lamar, there's a lot of people in my head that I could have thrown in there, even people I play with now. But I think that 5 defensively and offensively would be hard to stop.
No, I think so too. And then you can throw in there at 6 man. It would have been too easy for you to pick 4, so I had to give you to pick 5. Jace, thank you so much for your time, man. Again, congratulations. It's going to be an incredible milestone on Sunday, and 399 games and plenty left in the tank, so we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Tools. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Jace will play his 400th game on Sunday, so make sure you jump in and show some support for one of the NBL's greats.